Hello and welcome to my channel, Mr. Cool George. I'm a filmmaker and I like telling stories. So if you like hearing mysterious, suspense-filled stories with a twist, then you have come to the right place, to the right channel. That's exactly what I do, and I like telling my stories. So without wasting any time, let's get into today's story. So today's episode is going to be the last and final episode in this Australian kidnapping story that gone wrong. So, like I said before, the police got all these evidences against Julian. So when they applied the pressure and when they submitted all these proof in front of him, he could not hold on to his bullshit story for a long time. So finally he gave up and he narrated exactly what happened to the police. So it goes like this. So Julian met Caroline at their church, like I said before, and they both like devout Catholics, so they go to the church. So when Julian proposed to Caroline about his desire to marry her, she said to him, look, I'm still studying, I'm only 17 years of age, let me finish my studies and then we can think about getting married. And on top of that, she was only 17 years at that time. So she said, I have to be at least 18 years, as you know. So Julian had no option. So obviously Julian agreed to that. And then both the families of these two people, of this couple, already knew about the whole thing. So on that day, on the 4th of March, Julian picked up Caroline Watson from her house, and then they drove together to this forest, to this picnic area, and they went through that mud road, and Julian made up this story about this roadkill that only he could see because Caroline couldn't see, but she didn't pay much attention about it. So when they came back, Julian then said to her, look, I need to have a close look at this animal carcass. So he go outside the car and then he went through that mud road to have a look at that animal kill on the side of the road. So what he did was, at that point in time, because Julian planned everything in advance, so he went to behind the bush, and then he had all these tools that he needed for this kidnap. So he had all his the gloves, the jackets, the black balaclava, the black clothes, the shawl, the duct tapes, the knife. So everything he wanted, he had it. He was hiding all these things beforehand. So he took all those things and he wore those black clothes, and then he wore that mask or the balaclava, so no one could identify, even Caroline couldn't identify him. So then he came outside the bush. So at the exact point in time, Caroline was outside the car expecting for Julian to come back. And that's how she met this black thing standing right in front of her. So she got frozen. So at that exact moment, Julian just rushed towards her and then pushed her to the ground, ripped all her clothes off, and then put this blindfold on her eyes, and then put her in a hog-tied position, tied her hands and legs, and then threw her into the boot of the car. And then he also threw all these things that he had already hidden there, like the shovel, like all these tools that he needed. Then he put everything in the car, and then they drove towards the Alpine National Park. All these areas Julian was already familiar with. So he went there, and then he dragged Julian to this area of the forest, where then he unfolded her from her blindfold so she could clearly see that what is going to happen. So he just wanted to make sure that she should be terrified, so she could actually see that at that point in time when he was making this grave with his shovel, and then he dig that grave. All this time Caroline was looking terrified and petrified, and she didn't know exactly what is going to happen. So in her mind, it was certain that this guy, whoever he is, going to kill me. So she was praying all this time. Then once he finished digging that grave, he just threw her inside that grave, and then he just walked out of sight from her. And then after he reached a particular point, then he made sure that Carolyn couldn't see him. And at that point, you should remember that, you know, she's fully naked and her hands and legs are tied, so she couldn't run away or do anything. And it's deep forest, so even if she's going to scream, but she already had this duct tape around her mouth, so she couldn't scream. So then after reaching this behind this tree, then Julian took all his clothes, this black thing out, his balaclava out. He stashed all these things behind the tree, and then he just took only his knife, and then she just, you know, and then he made sure that, you know, there is nothing that suspicious for her. And then he started roaming around in the forest, screaming for help. And then Carolyn could hear his voice. So then Carolyn started shouting at him, say, "Oh, Julian, I'm here. I'm Julian. I'm here. Help me. I'm here." You know, like. Then he actually gone towards her, reached near Carolyn, and at that point in time, he just pretended and he acted like a best actor. Said that, you know, I've got kidnapped and I couldn't believe that. Anyway, I'm so happy to see you here, that you are alive. So he just used the knife, and then he untied her rope, and the blindfold was removed so she could see. And at that time, Julian also had no clothes. It was all part of his story. So then he said, "Okay, so now at least we are alive. You know, we have these bruises on our body. We are tired. We are dehydrated. But let's get out of this forest." And at that time, they just luckily saw this bag, which is full of things that they would really need, like food. It had water. But again, this was also something that Julian had very cleverly planted or prepared.